Good morning, everyone. All protocol observed. Good morning, distinguished panelists, ladies and gents. Welcome to our session entitled Her Data, Her Policies Towards a Gender Inclusive Data Future. On behalf of the African Union Development Agency, I am honored to welcome here today for this session, which is actually a continuity of a discussion we started at the African IGF in Addis Ababa. So the African Union Development Agency is mandated to support the socio-economic development of African countries, and part of it is this year we have been working on supporting the domestication of the AU data policy framework, because we do support the implementation of policies and strategies defined at the African Union level. So we are committed to supporting the implementation, as we just said, of the African Union data policy framework that was adopted in 2022. We are working to help the member state to develop robust national strategies and national data policies and build capacity in general within data governance and specifically with the data protection authorities. As we work to build data-driven economies across the continent, we must be acutely aware of the persistent gender digital divides we have been hearing from the beginning of the forum on Sunday, and the gender gap that exists within the data governance landscape. So these gaps may pose a significant barrier to what we are trying to achieve, to the full participation of African women and marginalized groups in the digital economy. So this session will explore the importance of a gendered approach to data and digital environments. We must ensure that the unique needs of women, girls, and marginalized communities are recognized and met. This requires the intentional application of a gender lens in the implementation of the AU data policy framework and the development of national data strategies and policies. So we have with us this morning a distinguished panel on site and online who will be sharing with us their expertise and insight on this crucial topic. So my name is Christelle Nana. I work for the African Union Development Agency. I'm a senior policy analyst, and I also lead the digitalization unit. So with me here this morning, we have online Mrs. Suzanne El Akabawi, who's the ICT advisor, the advisor of the ICT minister in Egypt. Welcome, Suzanne, if you're online, if you can hear.
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you so much.
We also have Mr. Victor Asila online, who's a data manager at Safaricom. Welcome. Me?
Thank you and good morning.
On site, we have Madame Bonita Nyamwere, who's Director of Research at Policy. We do have Madame Emila Gandhi, who's Global Head of Stakeholder Engagement, Policy Development at Meta. And to close the loop, we have Mr. Osei Kagia, who's IGF youth representative. So welcome to all of you. I think we'll start the discussion straight. I would like you, starting with the speakers online, to introduce yourself, share with us in 2 minutes briefly what you do that is relevant to our topic today. starting with Mrs. Suzanne Akabawi. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, esteemed panelists. My name is Suzanne Al-Aqabawi. I am advisor to the ICT Minister for Data Governance. My main role when I joined the ministry was to establish the Personal Data Protection Authority of Egypt so that we can implement the personal data law that was issued back in 2020 as part of the creation of a legal context that is favorable for digital transformation.
Thank you, Susan. Victor?
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Victor Asila. I work for Safaricom, a telecommunications company in Kenya, as a lead data scientist. So on a day-to-day basis, my work is to lead a team that builds data products using scientific methods that give insights to the business so that the business can work effectively. It's a pleasure being here, and I'm glad to be part of the panel.
Thank you, Victor. Bonita?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Bonita Nyamwire, and I work for Policy. Policy is based in Kampala in Uganda, and at Policy, we work at the intersection of data, design, and technology to ensure that experiences, needs of women are amplified in tech and data and digital technology overall on the African continent. Thank you.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are joining us from the world. My name is Osei Keja from Ghana. I'm a public interest technologist working at the intersection of society and technology. And I'm also here as an African youth rep on this panel. The topic is a very nuanced one, and youth being the central core of this conversation, also forming or using the internet. We hope to be part of the discussion where we get to contribute. Excited to be here and hope to learn more. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone. My name is Emila Gandhi, and good morning to you all. I'm head of stakeholder engagement at Meta, and my role really is to ensure that we have strategies in place to ensure that whenever we are building our products or our policies, we engage externally. We talk to people who use our products, we talk to experts, we talk to people who are interested in the issues that we are dealing with. So that's the team that I work on, and this is an important topic, and thank you so much for including us, and I'm really looking forward to having this discussion and learning from everyone on the panel.
Thank you very much. I think now that we know who we are in the room, we can kick off with the discussion. So we'll start with Bonita with the first question. So what for you is a gender inclusive data future, specifically for Africa, and how can it be achieved?
Thank you so much, Christelle. So a gender inclusive data is one that is representative of all genders. It also is representative of their intersecting identities. By intersecting identities, I mean like race, ethnicity, their age, educational level, socioeconomic status, geographical location, so that everyone is captured and no one is left behind, because intersection reveals injustices, inequalities, and so on and so forth. Then the other one on gender inclusive data is one that is that actively identifies biases and then addresses them. There are several biases in data, but also in technology. For instance, there's bias in algorithms. I remember this was talked about on Monday in the plenary session. There's data in bias in data, which can make data skewed or unevenly distributed. So which means that even the outcomes of such data that has bias will also be unevenly distributed. And so this also affects the other processes that come after the data, where such data will be used. For instance, in decision making, it will also be uneven, and so on and so forth. So there's also bias in designing technologies, for instance, bias in the languages, not supporting diverse languages, for instance, dialects on the African continent, which then limits accessibility. Then the other one about a gender inclusive data is one that ensures safety and privacy, generally protecting individuals from harm and exploitation, especially due to data misuse, but also the biases that come from the data. Then the other one is a gender inclusive data should be one that ensures agency and ownership in terms of allowing individuals and communities to have control over their data in a way that they are controlling to how the data is collected, how the data is stored, how the data is used. If there are any changes that need to be made to the data, for instance, they are involved. So generally, like citizens participating in the data, but especially on the gender side and other marginalized communities. And so how can this be achieved? So one, is to transform, one is to mainstream gender into national statistics in terms of in planning, in research, because mainstreaming helps to assess gender data collection and identify gaps relating to missing gender related indicators. So mainstreaming is one one aspect that can be done to achieve a gender inclusive data and gender inclusive data initiatives. Then the other one is transforming data collection processes through capacity building. For instance, in capacity building on designing data collection tools to be able to capture data in all different gender diversities, and then training data collectors and researchers to understand what gender inclusivity is, because not everyone may be aware or have that kind of training. And then again, under transforming data collection and capacity building, there is also equipping researchers and other stakeholders like policymakers and with the skills to identify and mitigate the biases that I already talked about. And then the other one is to involve and engage diverse communities in designing and implementing data initiatives. For instance, collaborating with women and feminist organizations to align goals and processes of initiatives. And then the other one is to share good practices on collecting and reporting gender data so as to shape the notions and impact of excellence. So this is very good, sharing good practices. What are the different stakeholders doing in terms of gender inclusive data initiatives, so that we all can be able to learn from each other. And then also to connect gender data to gender equality agendas, because gender equality agendas ideally are based on evidence and facts. And the facts come from the data that is collected, whether it is text data, whether it is numbers. So connecting these two, gender data to gender equality agendas, is very important. And then invest in research and innovation. funding interdisciplinary research focused on intersection of gender, data, and technology is also very important. And then also sustaining this funding in terms of upskilling that I already talked about, funding to maintain collaboration, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Maybe I should have interrupted you earlier because you gave quite a lot of insight towards the answer we were expecting. But it will also be good to give the responsibilities or suggest as you name. You mentioned quite a lot to answer the question. What I noticed is you mentioned the agenda, inclusive data involving the cultural representation within the design, the algorithm, safety and privacy, the agency and ownership of the communities and the individual. And then lately you were giving the answer to the how can it can be achieved. Yeah, mostly about involving the communities to collaborate on the gender inclusive data, good practice sharing, investment into research. I think we'll leave it there. We need to digest it, and we'll move to the next speaker, Mrs. Suzanne El Akabawi. So what are our government, our African government doing currently to ensure that women and marginalized groups have control over their data in a way that respect privacy and agency?
Thank you very much for allowing me to have a word about this matter. I think that mainly the work that is being done in African countries revolve around trying to have inclusive policy and regulations. It's important to develop gender inclusive policies and enforce these policies that would expressly address the needs and rights of women and marginalized groups. These policies should include ensuring that data protection laws are inclusive and consider unique vulnerability of these groups. A very important principle in this case is the principle of transparency and accountability, whereby regulations should require companies to be transparent about their data practices and hold them accountable for any issues related to misuse of data. In this case, governments should provide for regular audits and impact assessments to ensure compliance with the privacy standards. Another aspect would be related to the education and digital literacy, in which case providing education and training on digital literacy would empower women and marginalized groups to understand their rights, to practice them, and the implications of data sharing. And this would include teaching them how to protect the personal data and personal information online. Of course, teaching or encouraging women and marginalized groups to pursue education in career in fields like science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. These types of education encourage critical thinking, creativity, and problem-solving skills. So by having more of these people thinking critically, it will help us also implement the laws in a more efficient way. On the side of the businesses, designing tech companies should prioritize the development of technologies that are inclusive and accessible. In the case of in order to mitigate the impacts of the digital illiteracy in certain instances, having systems that instate privacy and personal data protection ex ante is important. During it's important to think during the design and testing phases, include personal data protection principles is important. As mentioned earlier by my colleague, addressing bias is key. It's important to implement measures to identify and mitigate bias in data sets. Obviously, recently in AI systems as well. So it's important to use diverse database and involve marginalized groups in the development process to ensure fair and equitable outcomes. Community engagement is another important pillar, whereby both governments and tech companies should actively engage with communities to understand the needs and concerns. And this can obviously be done through consultations, focus groups, partnerships with local organizations. The collaboration with civil society is important as well, because working with NGOs and advocacy groups and other civil society organizations can help ensure that the voices of women and marginalized groups are heard and considered in policy making and technology development. Finally, strengthening personal data protection through data protection laws that are robust and data protection laws that provide strong protection for personal data through the issuance of clear guidelines on how to obtain consent, how to minimize data, and to guarantee the right to access and deletion of personal data where applicable. The implementation of privacy-enhancing technologies is becoming important. Encryption, anonymization, and securing data storage to protect users' data from unauthorized access and misuse is an important aspect as well. To give a quick overview of where Egypt stands in this case, Egypt does recognize the importance of data protection, and it has introduced the law 151 of the year 2020. And the law aims at protecting the personal data and penalize the misuse of personal data. So it is part of the strategic goals and the vision, the Egypt Vision 2020, and we work on achieving and guaranteeing a gender equality through the empowerment of women economically, socially, and politically. We do try to give women control over their data. The Personal Data Protection Center has an important projects in this case, ensuring that their privacy and the agency over the data are respected. Generally speaking, it is important that the visions emphasize the importance of creating inclusive digital societies where all citizens, especially women and marginalized groups, can benefit from digital transformation and protection initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Suzanne, for your very elaborated answer. Allow me to follow up with you on a certain of points that you mentioned. Definitely, our member states are working towards strengthening the data protection authorities and working on enforcing the data protection side of the data for the communities overall, and I'm sure for the minorities, the marginalized group, for the women, for our girls. But you talked about the government that need to work with the companies to be transparent about their data processes. How does this practically happen? That's one. How is it enforced? I would like to ask. What do our state do? That's one. How do we track inclusive technologies? I mean, practically, how does that work at the national level? What do the government do with the research, the academia? Because you mentioned the data protection authorities, you mentioned the companies, the commercial side of it, you mentioned the civil society, what happened at the academia level, and practically, do the engagement with the communities happen in the countries? How often, how is it further enforced or implemented? How do we measure the impact? How can we evaluate the impact of such engagement? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. That is very interesting. Actually, in Egypt, the Personal Data Protection Law has established the Personal Data Protection Authority, and it has given the authority a certain set of mandates varying from building the capacity of personal data protection officers and personal data protection consultants. But it has also provided for the controllers and processors to obtain licenses. And in the case of Egypt, this has been an important part because it is allowing the Personal Data Protection Center to review the practices with the tech companies and generally speaking with controllers and processors on sound personal data management practices. The center instates methodologies on how to handle personal data in a more secure way, and through the licensing process, review the methodologies and the policies and the collection so that we can guarantee that the principles relevant to personal data protection are respected, such as minimization, purpose limitation, etc. So in practice, what happens is that through the review, through the licensing process, granting the license process, we get to review with the various stakeholders their practices relevant to the personal data protection, both from a legal perspective and from a technical perspective. On the other hand, the center has another mandate that is to raise awareness. So we work very closely with the civil society, with the private sector, and we try to raise awareness through various events. And this is another aspect of how we get to include all stakeholders. In the case of issuing policies, guidelines, and up-to-date policies and guidelines with the fast-paced developments in technology, we also get to have public consultation on these guidelines. So it gives us an idea about the interests and how the different stakeholders see the implementation of the law, so that we can implement it in the most efficient ways. Academia is heavily involved, because training data protection officers, who are the ones that need to assist the personal data protection in implementing the law in their respective be it a controller or a processor, is through the academia and through we are trying to instate to include curricula related to personal data protection in various disciplines through academia as well. So the center has a vast mandates, a vast range of mandates that are, if working together and put together, should allow to mitigate the impacts and and have a more inclusive approach in the journey of digital transformation.
Thank you very
I
much.
answered your question.
Definitely. Thank you very much, Susan.
Thank
We'll now move to the technology side. We'll look at Victor, who works daily on big data and data science. So generative AI and big data analytics are shaping the future of the information. You do a lot of computation, a lot of analysis. We get insight from that. What opportunities and what risk do these technologies present for gender inclusive data policies, looking specifically at the African context for our women, mothers, ourselves, our girls, and then the marginalized group?
Right, thank you. So there are numerous opportunities.
Victor, maybe before you start,
yeah,
I would like you to think of if my grandmother was in the room and you were to explain that to her, so we can all understand.
I will try to be as basic as possible. Yeah, so having said that, I think it will be imperative that I try to kind of define what generative AI and big data analytics means for a basic person. So I would start with big data. So we generally describe big data using what we famously call the 3 V's. So we describe it using the volume, that is the amount of data we generate per unit time. We also define it by a second V, which we call veracity. So how much, how frequent do we generate this data per unit of time? Then thirdly, we define it in terms of variety. So what different pieces of data do we generate, within a specific unit of time? So the different data sets that can be generation could be, classified as text, probably images, sound, video, and what have you. So I think from a basic perspective, that's how we describe big data. Then analytics is just the tools and methodologies that we use to get insights from the data, from the big data that we have generated and collected. Now, what is generative AI? So generative AI is a type of AI that can generate new content. And the new content can be a text, can be a word, can be a picture, can be a video, or whatever that is possible within the technology. So I think in that sense, my grandmother should be able to understand what generative AI and what big data means. And moving on to what potential it holds in terms of shaping gender and inclusive data policies. We'll start by opportunities, and I think from a technology point of view, having the ability to generate huge data sets within a unit of time at a faster rate, and having varied types of data being collected, then we have an opportunity, number one, to ensure that we get granular insights, and these insights are not just insights for the sake of insights, but insights that are related to gender disparities, insights that are going to help us identify these gender disparities, and give us a glimpse into the areas that need intervention. So looking at analyzing big data, I mean, we have an opportunity to uncover nuanced patterns and trends that relate to gender. So that's the first part. I mean, we have an opportunity to collect gender-specific data, and we have an opportunity to analyze this gender-specific data to ensure that we uncover the patterns that relate to gender. Then number two, as a practitioner, most of the time we do help the business using data to kind of tailor specific products that speak to specific appetites for our customers. So we can flip that and also use the same technologies to come up with solutions using data that address gender-specific related issues, and in doing so, we are going to promote inclusivity and also promote equity. Now, the second opportunity that I look at from a practitioner perspective is that as practitioners, when we build these models, we use algorithms, and partly these algorithms do propagate the bias that we as humans, the biases that are inherent in the data that we collect, that we generate and collect as humans. And therefore, by propagating these biases, then we inadvertently kind of we kind of perpetuate, the same into the algorithms. So what we can do is that we usually do what we call algorithmic audits. So from a Safaricom perspective, we specifically come up with policies and practices that each data scientist who is building a model or an algorithm that they adhere to. So part of the checks that we do have is to ensure that the algorithms that we build do not perpetuate biasness, and that they are fair and that they are equitable. So from a craft perspective, that's what we do at Safaricom. From also a craft perspective, we try to ensure that the data that we use to build these models and algorithms is as diverse as possible. And one thing we usually do is to ensure that the data is balanced. So we encourage our data scientists to ensure that their data is balanced, and that it's inclusive to all groups of interest, and more so, it does not negatively impact any group. A third opportunity that I see is policy development and implementation. Once we have these insights, we can make informed decisions, and therefore policymakers who make these decisions can leverage these insights to craft more effective and inclusive gender policies. There's another bit to that, which is monitoring and evaluation. Since we are collecting timely data, I think we have an opportunity to sort of in a near real time basis. I always believe that we cannot, achieve real-time kind of monitoring. But we can achieve a near real-time monitoring where we continuously monitor the impacts of gender policies, providing real-time feedback to our policymakers and enabling them to make adjustments where needed. So I'll quickly cover the risks. So one risk that as a practitioner I see is that is on data privacy and security. So whenever you handle gender-specific information or data, then that exposes you to information that can be used in a negatively way. And therefore, it can fail to it can expose privacy issues of individuals by exposing their sensitive information. So any breach could have serious implications, and therefore for the bad actors, they can use that as an opportunity to misuse that data. It could be misinterpreted inadvertently, leading to policy that can inadvertently harm rather than help the gender inclusivity agenda. So the other one, I think I've spoken about it, which is bias and discrimination. Then we also can run into ethical and legal challenges. I've heard of cases where some of the companies have been penalized by the regulators because of the biases that the algorithms do inherently carry, and also just by doing that they have failed to adhere to the regulatory compliance landscape around data usage and the complexity of AI. So I think in a nutshell, those are the risks and the opportunities that I see from a practice perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victor. Maybe Emila has something to add there.
Thank you so much. Adding to what he just said, or in general?
In general,
Yeah.
to what he said.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Victor. I was writing notes. I know you asked, how to describe this for, like our grandparents, but I was writing notes as well as you was talking because we all benefited from that. I will, I think just beyond just adding to what he said, I think obviously it's important to look at inclusion for products, to look at inclusivity by design and not just think about it as an afterthought. I thought that was really, if that's something that Safaricom is doing, I think that that's something that's really, really great. But just, I think, adding on to what he said, I think for us as a tech company, when we think through about what inclusion means for us, and just going back to what some of my colleagues have already said, for us, in diversity and inclusion for data practices, just obviously it starts not only when you see the product out there. Inclusion for us is at the core of our mission as a company. It defines what we do, and by that I mean, I think let's take a step back, because when we're thinking of just products and policies, we are forgetting that there are people behind them. So I think, and I've seen, I think even some research by policy as well, that it's important for tech companies to even, when they're doing the hiring practices, to actually hire the, people who come from these underrepresented groups. I'm really gratified to see, I think even for Safaricom, you have people like Victor who are leading this work, rather than having someone sitting somewhere trying to design products for a society that they are not, that they are not in, because lived experiences, I think, are very, very important. You might read about something, you might learn about something from books, but actually having lived experiences is important. So for us at Meta, inclusion is at the core of our mission. We hire people, you know, with that in mind. But also when you hire someone, and we know this, professional development is also important because you want to keep them. So making sure that they actually stay, you know, in the company. I've been at Meta for 8 years now, you know, so, you know, I think prioritizing professional development is important. I'll also look at the where I work in, which is stakeholder engagement. And for us, stakeholder engagement is not just outreach. And I think for some, it's just focusing on outreach, but we know stakeholder engagement is about relationship building. And once we talk about relationships, particularly for us in these parts of the world, there is the issue of trust. And I'll be the first to acknowledge that there is a trust deficit for us, especially in tech companies and the people that use our platforms. How do we ensure that we build trust? And it's not something that, you know, by just being here at the IGF and having this conversation, we build trust. It's a marathon. It's not something that you just, you know, build trust. One thing Madam Susan mentioned is that it's important for tech companies and we do this as well, where there is a trust deficit, working with local partners to ensure that they are an intermediary for us. We have a trusted partner program. I'm sure for some of them you have heard about that, where we have 400 organizations globally that we work with, and you know, we'll be here if you're part of that program to hear from you as well. But our inclusive stakeholder engagement strategy is anchored on 3 things. One is expertise. And by expertise, I know in this room we have some people who have PhDs. But for us, expertise, we're also looking at lived experience as a form of expertise. And I think that broadens the people that we talk to. I'm happy to see someone from the youth group, and I was saying to him, what's the limit of youth groups, because we know for in some regions you know it's as high as you can be. So expertise is one pillar that we look at. We also look at transparency. So when we are identifying the stakeholders that we are going to talk to about our policy development or product development, we go beyond you know, when we're identifying, we go beyond geographical diversity, we go beyond gender diversity or even language, but we, you know, or expertise, but we really look at it from a comprehensive you know, from a comprehensive perspective. I liked what Bonita said, you know, about intersecting identities, because if we just talk about underrepresented groups, is it women? Is it people with different needs? So there are you know, intersecting identities, I think, that we can look at when we are engaging. And the last one would be transparency. It's not, we can do all these things, you know, look at people with lived experiences, people who have the expertise. We can be as inclusive as we think we want to be. But if we are not transparent about the work that we are doing, and we are not talking about it and, you know, responding to the questions that we receive, and sharing as much information and the decisions that we are making, and sharing information about who we are engaging, why are we engaging with them, what have we gathered from them, then it's a fruitless exercise. So being transparent about all these things, I think, would be important. And I think I'll just end there. And let me know if there's anything else. I know it was just supposed, do you have anything to add? And I've added a whole
We'll come back to you. Thank you very much, Emila. So now we'll turn to the young man in the room representing the youth voice. So, Jose, how do you think young people in our society can play a role in shaping a more inclusive data governance ecosystem? Where do we start? Can you share any initiative where you guys have voices and it has successfully influenced policymaker in the data governance landscape?
Thank you very much. A lot has been said. First, my able panelists were presenting, I picked some words: representative, inclusive, transparent, lived experience, not just outreach, expertise. I think we need to start from the conception space of policies, then we talk about the implementation. And also one word you use, afterthought. Oftentimes, most young people are seen as afterthoughts in these stakeholder engagements or say formulation of policies. We are just like the props to the occasion when everything has been done. Hey, young people, come. And we just add them out. But I'm very, very happy in this discussion, we have a young person on board. And throughout the whole process, the designing of frameworks, data frameworks, you voice are not being. I made this comment whilst I think on this same topic in Ethiopia. Honorable Stanley Olajide mentioned that there was a youth forum, and one young person did made a comment which changed the entire perspective of parliamentarians. Young people, especially in West Africa and also Africa, I co-lead with Mariam as coordinator for West African Youth IGF and also the Ghana IGF. We've been doing amazing things through, so Ghana IGF, we did a virtual hackathon, tech hackathon this year, and there were so many ideas which were churned out. We did push to, we had a report and we did push to our policymakers. But as I said, from the conception stage to the implementation stage, there's that kind of big gap. Young people are left out. The implementation process or say legislative process, young people are left out. We have the expertise to. We are not saying we are a repository of all knowledge or we are monolith of knowledge. We know better than our fathers or say our mothers. No, but we need to be included. There's that big gap there from the conception stage that we've not heard anything. So the West Africa Youth IGF, we had good engagement with our parliamentarians. There were outcomes, but we don't know the end game of it. We've not been included in the whole process at the end of it. So the young people have been doing African Youth IGF. We came here at last time in Ethiopia. We've done incredibly well. We've had our outcomes, but we don't know. We just, okay, go. That's it. Young people have been at the core front of advocacy, awareness, and also mobilization. We've been effective mobilizers. So Safaricom, Meta, AU, NEPAD, GIZ, doing amazing works. But I think we can be great conveyor belts in speaking to people with lived experiences, bringing people with lived experience on board, conveying the message out there, being part of the implementation process. I hope I effectively answered your question.
I'm following up. So I understood that you have been voicing, you have been doing great things, and there have not been any positive outcome from your engagement or your handovers, which means there is no successful example of what you have worked on that has influenced the policymaker. Is it correct?
On the granular level or say on personal level, I personally may have worked on projects which have influenced things, but as a collective, it's firefighting. It's very hard. It's like you are shouting, and across the continent, Africa, a lot of young people feel dejected, unheard. It's like they are screaming, but they are not heard of because they keep shouting the same things. But on a personal level, on a granular level, people may have, or I may have some experiences here.
Okay. May I follow up by asking, so what do you recommend, 2 to 3 recommendation practical on how we can engage and make sure that your voice are not only heard, but act upon on regarding the issues we're discussing now, to the policymakers, to the private sector, to the researcher, to us as a development agency, to the partners?
Vision. I would like to quote my favorite teacher from primary school. He said, if you know the road and you don't know where you are going, it will lead to nowhere. So we need to have a shared vision. So from the conception stage to the implementation stage, we know where we are going so that the young people might be bought into the idea. We are going here, we are going here, that's how we are going. And also system thinking. we need to continuously think through things. There may be some faults from the conceptualization or say frameworks where we can piece things together, the jigsaw, we can piece things together so that we know we are moving somewhere, continuously thinking through things, through linear complexity or say diverse complexity. We need to continually think through things, and also continuous learning, whether on the side or say our policymakers or say big tech, all stakeholders. Must be that continuous learning that leads to personal mastery, the expertise, continuously learning through things, learning benchmarking from other experiences, where we need to robustly think through the framework, where we need to learn from other people to benchmark appropriately. So this is my answer to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jose. So I would like to come back to Emila before we open the floor for the first break to the participant. We heard you when you were complimenting Victor's answer about how you consider the inclusivity at Meta, how you're doing that. I would like to add, how is it tailored to the different context, the inclusivity that you incorporate into your processes from the beginning, looking at different perspectives?
Thank you so much. Thank you. That's a very important question. I think before I even respond to that, I think I was just writing notes on what he was saying, and I think also youth need as much support as possible to get to where they are going once there's a shared vision. In terms of contextualizing our approaches, here's what we do, and it really depends on each context. But what's important for us, first of all, is really to ensure that external stakeholders, when we are engaging, are involved right from the beginning. So it's not when we are now going out to them, but actually understanding what are their issues. What is it that we need to prioritize? We have the products, we have the, Facebook, Instagram, all these platforms. But what are some of the issues that you are facing in terms of, our community standards? Yeah. So what are those issues? So understanding that and bringing it internally to ensure that we, when we look at our policies, we look at that, from that lens. So that's number one. So ensuring that we are actually prioritizing issues that we hear on the ground, that we hear from local participants. The second thing is actually devising our engagement approach with, with an understanding of our stakeholders. And by this, I mean, not all formats of engagement can work with different stakeholders. Zoom, there's a Zoom fatigue. I don't want to say Zoom, there's not like company Zoom, but there is just engaging virtually. For some, it doesn't work. That's number one. Some people prefer face-to-face. Also understanding language, because we know, different languages, what we might express in English is not what it is in isiZulu or in other languages. So really understanding who needs to be in the room as well. I might be the one working on the issue, but for him to understand, maybe I'm not the one who can talk to him about it. Can we do it via policy, or can we do it through other organizations? So understanding that to ensure that our engagement strategy speaks to that. So what I'm trying to say here is that there are processes that we have to put in place before we get to the destination, as we are saying. So many ways, I think, of slicing the cake.
Since you started talking, I was about to say, what have you done in relation to the youth? Talking about that, can you share with us practically?
Or what we've done with the youth. So first of all,
considering the point that he mentioned, to be embarked from the beginning, having the vision as
yes. So what have we done with the youth? Quite a number of initiatives. So I can start One, around capacity building, because we also know that for youth to actually contribute meaningfully into our product and policies developments, you have to understand the issues. Otherwise, just you and me talking will not be as useful. So one of the things that we have done is to put resources into capacity building initiatives like the African Internet Governance School, which I think the last one was in Addis. So making sure that initiatives like that are well supported and well resourced. Also supporting some of the local youth IGFs as well, supporting in terms of resources, but also ensuring that we even have some of our internal experts, if you invite them to some of the events. The other thing also is we talked about recruitment, but also even actually, having programs where we have some young people working within the company and also learning what is happening and ensuring that they can bring that, through internships, through placements as well, to ensure that they can bring some of the things that they learn, externally. We're also working with some universities as well to support their programs around tech, degrees or apprenticeships or, courses as well. So quite a few multifaceted ways that we are working with the youth. But we also know that it's not something that we can do by ourselves. So we'll need to work with governments like Madam Susan's departments or other organizations like Policy who are already entrenched in the processes, and NEPAD as well, who are already doing quite a lot with Agenda 2063 and all these other things.
Thank you very much, Emila. We'd like to pause here for now to open the floor to the participant on site, but also online, if we do have questions before we continue. Maybe we'll look online first with our online moderator, Catherine. Do we have questions?
So we have one question from Gaharnai, who says, "Greetings from Afghanistan. Could anyone share a sample of the strategy to draw on it?" Yeah, so I think it's not particularly about the discussion, but maybe of the strategy, like the one we gave in the description, the AU data policy framework and the strategies we are developing. But I'm not sure if the tech support can allow him to ask his question.
Maybe we can try to find out if you lies with the participant online, and then we come back to you to have a more accurate question, I will suggest. So we'll take a question on site. Yes, Melody.
Thank you. So mine is more of a contribution. I think one of the issues you raised was we want something more practical. And if you are to explain to your grandmother, they understand. And I think when we are talking about community engagement and capacity building, can you hear me? I'm going to give an example. I don't work for Meta, but I'll give an example of WhatsApp, for example. My family lives in rural Zimbabwe, so there is no any form of entertainment at all. So imagine you've been working in the fields the whole day, you come home, there is no entertainment. But recently, when I was talking to my mother, she was telling me that there is a WhatsApp group she joined. So every week they post like a chapter of a novel. Then she sits with her daughters-in-law and they read the novel. So I was thinking that capacity building and community engagement should not be that difficult. It's about finding something that will facilitate an engagement with your community. So if it means using a WhatsApp platform, for example, to reach out to so many people and talking about issues of privacy, we're talking about issues of gender inclusion and access to data, that would be one way. I think something very practical and a way of actually reaching out to the communities. Yes, I don't work for Meta, but I think it's quite relevant. And in my context, I find it quite useful as well.
I thank you very much, Melody, for your contribution. Once more, I think it highlights the need to collaborate, because you were talking about the WhatsApp group, but this has to be initiated maybe by the local community group, the NGO on the ground, who will be who will have to work maybe with people like us, or with the you know the so much. Any other questions on site? The ladies, no question. Yeah. The men, no question. Okay. We come back to our online participant question. Has it been refined? Maybe we'll open it to the panelists if they would like to contribute to it, as it has been drafted. Pete?
Greetings from Afghanistan. Could anyone share a sample of the strategy to draw on it? Thank you.
Is it an engagement strategy or
I'll suggest to answer as you understand it, because it's quite vague. So
okay. I will respond to and also just drawing up, I think, from what Melody just said. I think to draw up a strategy, you have to understand. I think you have to have a clearer picture of what success looks like. Like, what is it that you want to do? And then you start sort of working backwards. And the second thing is to know that a strategy is not something that, in my opinion, that you finalize and then you say, now let me go out there and do what I've laid out, because you might have a strategy, but you need to fine tune it as you go. Because, and I'll give you an example where sometimes we're working on a policy at Meta, and like a few weeks ago, we were working on something around eating disorders, and you think, oh, let's talk to medical professionals who deal with this issue, or psychologists. But then you realize actually you need to talk to young people who might be affected by this, or creators who are creating content around, having a certain body type and having a certain, body image and all that. So once you do that, once you maybe talk to a few people, you come back to say, you know what, actually, I need to re-look at my strategy. So I think, just to answer to him, a strategy, of course, you might have the frame. Who is it that you want to talk to? So the identification, first of all, understanding the problem, identifying who it is that you want to talk to, maybe lay out the different formats of the engagements. Is it going to be in person? Are you going to do virtual engagements? What resources do you need? Do you need, like, what budget do you need? Or do you not need a budget? The people that you're talking to, are they willing to talk to you? Are they able to talk to you? Or are they willing but unable because maybe they don't have airtime to talk to you? So I think there are quite a few things that you might look at. And the last thing I think that you mentioned is impact measurement, and looking at how do you measure the results of your engagement.
thank you very much, Emila. We will resume with the questions. Do you? Oh, sorry.
Hi, can you hear me? Good. Good morning or good afternoon for those online, in case they're tuning in from somewhere in the afternoon. I come from the Gambia, and there was an issue for the FGM bill that was called to be amended, and it caused a riot in the country, and a lot of people from the local communities and from the urban areas as well, they came out and had, I think, about a week or two, it was the country was in uproar. They didn't want the bill amended. Some of it wanted the bill to be just out. And it kind of calls on to show how people, when they're concerned about something, when they understand what it is, they actually push for it. And so in my country, for instance, we've had the data protection bill drafted since 2019, where in 2024 now, it's been 5 years. And so we don't have that kind of uproar or that kind of concern from civil society, from the students, young people, from the academia or anything like that. that much that concerned like they were with the FGM. And although this is an important issue as well, I think data is also an important issue. So the context is in such a way that people don't understand data, its importance, why it needs to be protected, and what measures are to be put in place to ensure that, you know, there's inclusive data policy, inclusive data future that we're talking about here. So what can the various stakeholders, the policymakers, the youth, the big tech companies, the academia, and government do to ensure that people have a deeper and more concise understanding of data, its importance, and things like that? What can they do collaboratively or at individual levels as well to kind of build that understanding within the community?
Thank you very much for your question. I believe some of the answer to the question has been given, but I'll open the floor again. I'll let the panelists, maybe starting with Suzanne, to tell us what can the country do for the citizen to be aware, to be sensitized about such issues in such a way that they feel concerned or they react when need be. Suzanne, please.
I'm sorry, I won't open my video because I have an internet issue, so I'm barely hearing most of what's happening. If
Okay.
I understand well your question, you're asking about what governments should do. Could you please repeat the question again?
Yeah, so the participants said it's challenging for the population to react to some issues if they are not aware of the subject, if they don't know what's going on. And we all understood, or we all know that data is very important, data protection, data privacy is important. What can be done by, the question was, what can be done by the different stakeholders to ensure that the population, the citizen are sensitized, aware of the importance of data management, data protection, data privacy, data security issues?
Okay, thank you very much. Let me tell you that the issue with data protection is that we used to have relationships between human beings that see each other. And now with digital transformation, we are sharing our data with people we don't know. And the fact that we don't know the risks associated with such sharing is what is an actual problem. Because if we understand the risks of misuse, the value of personal data and how it has become a very valuable asset to the citizen and to businesses, it then becomes embedded in the culture and inherent to our day-to-day actions. So governments, mainly their role would be to raise awareness on various aspects, raise awareness about the rights to citizens, raise awareness about the risks associated with with the mishandling of personal data, putting in place a proper taxonomy of risks is important. Having scenarios of the risks associated with misuse of data shared with citizens so that they understand the importance of protecting their personal data and the value of their data and how to ask what will be done with their data is important. This is mainly done through education. It takes a long time because there will be an important cultural shift associated with this. Most African countries are warm countries, and they feel closer when they share their data to each other. And now we are putting them in a context where most of the services are moving to a digital space where they don't know what is happening and where this data will end up being with. So it's important to raise awareness. It's important also to give a lot of responsibility and accountability to the companies and controllers and processors about the importance of properly handling data. Governments should emphasize the value of data as an asset that is worthy of protection, like any other asset a company would have. That it gives a competitive edge when there is security of personal data. People will be more encouraged to deal with those who have sound personal data practices. Cascading down methodologies on controllers and processors on how to handle the data and how to secure it and how to see the value and draw value out of it will encourage them to implement those practices and internal policies that allow such protection. And in parallel, of course, raising awareness, including in curricula for school students, university students, the importance of personal data and personal data protection. This is also a multi-stakeholder approach, and the involvement of all stakeholders, including youth, is very important. In Egypt, we work a lot with the Ministry of Youth in trying to find solutions so that they are interested in reading privacy policies, in understanding their rights. So it's important that governments work on various pillars to achieve the target and purpose of raising awareness about the risks, about the opportunities, and the value of data.
Thank you very much, Susan.
Thank you.
Do any of the panelists would like to add to the response? Yes. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. I would like to add on what Susan was explaining. So raising awareness on risks, benefits, but also government needs to maintain transparency throughout the whole process, because most of the time you find that citizens lack information, or some information is withheld for reasons also that we do not know. So transparency is very key. Then the other one is collaboration. As government is raising awareness, they need to collaborate with other stakeholders. There is academia, there are civil society organizations that work with citizens a lot. So this collaboration is very important. They can go into raising awareness together with government. Where government cannot reach, civil society will reach, academia will reach. Then the other one is also, as they do awareness raising, it should be done on platforms and channels that can reach all the citizens, Because, for instance, if I'll give an example of what government in Uganda did when they were introducing the digital ID. We didn't know much about the digital ID, but we just heard, oh, you need to go and register. You need a national ID for you to be able to access services, but we're not told what are the benefits, what are the risks, what do we need to register? And many people misinterpreted, because it is an exercise that came at a time when we're nearing elections. And again, they are going to do the same thing. They are going to renew our national IDs when we are nearing elections in 2016, and nothing is being done, just like the other time. So explaining to the citizens, why are we doing this? So that time, all of us misunderstood the exercise to like wanting to track the voters within the country, and because of multi-party politics, so people said, I am not registering. Others gave wrong information, and now people are suffering because of the wrong information they gave. during the national ID registration exercise. So the transparency is key, involving other stakeholders, but also the different channels. You know, because if you use a radio and then there's my mother in the village who doesn't have a radio, or if you use trucks which are going around the city with megaphones, what about those people who are deep down in the village? How will they get the information? So, and that's what I can add on that. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Bonita. We know transparency, collaboration with the different stakeholders, and making sure that the channels and the platform used can reach all the citizens. Anything else to add?
Quick one. I think the topic is very, very interesting. Her data, her policies towards a gender inclusive data future. I sit here as a man, and I would like to tell all the men here that we are in a position of privilege. In the society we live is deeply patriarchal, and we should not be very dismissive in terms of the position we do find ourselves in our offices. When these policies are brought to us, we should not be dismissive of what we are talking about. I think that part is often neglected because of how gender and societal norms are. That's what I would say.
Thank you very much. Yes, please, sir. May I as well suggest that you present yourself before you ask the question so we know? Could you please present yourself briefly and then you ask the question? Thank you.
Okay, I'll be very quick. I hope I'm audible. Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Odu from Nigeria. It's a very good thing I'm actually in this space, listening to all what we've been saying and the conversations. And I think I'm here to learn and I want to know. We've been talking about these data policies and the rest. And I think over time, what I found out is we're not lacking policies. In fact, we have a good repository of policies, but we always have issues. And I'm speaking from my own primary constituency, which is Africa. We do have issues when it comes to this implementation. Are there actually mechanisms that we can start using to actually improve how we implement these policies? Because you come up with a good policy, yes, you want to include women and all of that and everything, but 2 years, 3 years down the line, it's the same result. So we're still repeating the same thing, going around the same cycle. It's just something we can start doing to improve how we implement these policies. That's one. The second one, which I have an issue is data interoperability within Africa. How are we sharing data? How secure is it? Can we even share data amongst ourselves within the African continent? It's an issue which I think I want to learn. I want to know more. How can you help with this so that I can take something back home? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. We'll take the second one and then we'll quickly have an attempt to answer them.
Okay, good morning to all and good day everywhere you are. And my name is Peter King and I am from Liberia. I represent the Liberia Internet Governance Forum. My question goes to the Mita lady. Please, as I heard you talk about trust partnership program, inclusive stakeholder strategy. My issue goes to the idea, what Meta as one of the global brand in terms of data as data, the data you have at your disposal, what measure or what, not just because I want to also commend you for a program that you've sponsored or supported at the Africa School of Internet Governance. Beyond that, what program or what project do you have in mind in terms of sustainability that look at the issue of protecting policy for underrepresented groups and underserved countries? For me, I speak also for the region in the MRU, that is Liberia, Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Ivory Coast. We do not see program that affects your users in terms of data, because if you look at it, there are so many things that people need to be capacitated towards it. And when you talk about gender inclusive data future, how is the future protected when a lot of content that make you get the money and from the people who are not even seen by you? That is my issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your questions. So We will have an attempt to answer to all of them before we get kicked out of the room. Yeah, we have exactly 5 minutes to finish the session.
Oh, so do you want me to jump in quickly?
Yes, please.
So we have 5 minutes, and we can always discuss later. So good to hear from you. We have a team that's responsible for Anglophone speaking countries, and I'll be happy to introduce you to that team as well, because I think, yes, local partnerships, and the example that I gave is just one of the many things that we are working on. But as you say, I think it's so difficult to just say these things in these big forums, but you're not seeing something at the local level. And it would be great, I think, for you to meet with some of our local teams as well. Yeah.
There was a question about the implementation of the policies. So one of the participants said he doesn't think that we lack policies, but we lack the implementation of the. Does any of the panelists would like to take that?
Yeah, thank you very much. Oftentimes, the importance of data protection frameworks or say laws are often misconstrued in the sense of the policy communication around it. I know for a fact in 2022 or 2023, I stand to be correct, Nigeria implemented the Data Protection Act, which is very, very paramount, very, very necessary. But the policy communication around it. So the average person is seen as, oh, these data frameworks, it's not necessary. But again, Africa has come a long way. So far, more than 30 countries have developed frameworks and all, and it's still a work in progress. And data interoperability is quite a big issue, but I think we are also making a significant stride as a continent, Africa, but the issue has to be trust. The issue has to be trust, so we need to build on trust, and most importantly too is the policy communication around it. How do governments buy into the trust? How we can exchange data and all that. But still, I think we are getting somewhere compared to say 5 years ago. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ose, for your answer. Any other view to complement?
To add on what Ose has said, I think the AU is doing a great job on getting the different African countries to comply on data protection, on privacy, and all these other issues. So, and even GIZ is also doing a great job supporting the AU in all these aspects. So, like Osei has said, there are baby steps that we are taking, but we have moved and we are somewhere and we are continuing to move. Maybe by the end of some 10, 20 years will be somewhere. So, but we are, and also African countries are taking into consideration benchmarking and learning from each other. Yeah, so Rwanda is doing well. Different countries are learning from it, and also the others, yeah.
Thank you very much. Just to re-emphasize what you just said, the work is on progress. We are doing baby steps, but eventually we'll be there. So indeed, we may not be lacking the policies and the regulation, but even in the way we develop them, we are now including implementation plans, which means that we have the intent to have them implemented, domesticated, and potentially enforced. That's one. This is the work that we're doing. We work for a development agency. Our mandate is to implement the policies that are defined at the union level. So we are making progress. And to re-say what has been said during the week, we talk about harmonization. It may be an ideal concept, but we are looking into aligning policies regionally, aligning them continentally. So there is a projection to have the system, the technology, all that to communicate. Let's put it this way. So before we get kicked out of the room, I would like each of my distinguished panelists maybe to say a word to resume our conversation today. One word. We'll start with Suzanne and Victor online, and then we'll move back to the room.
Thank you. It's really difficult to say just one word, but I think that the main word I like is education. I believe education is the key to understanding, to securing, to critically think, and it's important that we keep raising awareness and educating people about their rights, their duties, and responsibilize them to act soundly
Thank you very
this new
much.
era.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. Victor?
Yeah, thank you. So I'll summarize it in a sentence or two. So we have something we
One
say in
word.
South Africa. We train for the world. So we train.
One word.
We train for the world.
One word.
Skills.
Thank you. Emila?
Collaboration.
Thank you.
Multi-stakeholder.
Thank you.
Inclusivity.
Thank you. Thank you very much for today. Thank you to our distinguished panelists. Thank you for taking the time to be with us for the conversation we had on the subject, on the topic. This is also how we raise awareness. We talk about that, we discuss that, we say sometimes things that we have heard 1,000 times, but you know, in French we say, la répétition est la mère de la science. So repetition is the mother of the I would like as well to thank all my participants on site. Thank you for your attention and for your participation to the conversation. Have a good day. Bye.
Have a good day too.
I would
Bye.
like to invite the room to have a family picture before we get again kicked out of the room. Thank you.
Thank you.